Do you want to be ahead of the game for the latest in arts, music, cuisine, and entertainment across the Middle East's most dynamic capital cities? Al Monitor is proud to launch our City Pulse newsletters, focused exclusively on local news, starting in Riyadh, Dubai, Istanbul, and Doha. Each week, our on-the-ground writers in these cities cover the latest cultural happenings and trends, so you have everything you need to know for the best local experiences. To subscribe for free, go to almonitor.com, that's al-monitor.com, and sign up on our newsletter page.
Welcome back to our On the Middle East podcast after a protracted pause. I was busy traveling across the region, so today I'll be talking about an underreported topic: the spiraling tensions between regional heavyweights, Saudi Arabia and the UAE. The two Gulf states have been at opposing sides of several conflicts over the years, notably in Sudan and Syria. But it is in Yemen that things are getting decidedly dicey, as the UAE-backed secessionist alliance, known as the Southern Transitional Council, makes massive territorial gains along Saudi Arabia's border with Yemen. With us here to unpack the stakes is our own Joyce Karam, senior editor at Al Monitor. So welcome to our program, Joyce.
Great to be with you, Amberin.
So listen, we're going to talk about the UAE and Saudi Arabia today and this escalating hostility between these two very important countries, which now is concentrated in Yemen. Joyce, can you briefly sum up what's going on currently in Yemen between these two countries?
Totally. This is a very important topic that's getting little coverage in mainstream media. What we're seeing unfold in Yemen, a little bit in Sudan, and playing in other areas in the Arab and Muslim world is a heated rivalry between the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia. Those two were just allies in the first Trump administration. If you remember, they came together in advocating a boycott against Qatar. Well, now everything changed. As you mentioned, Yemen is an important important area where these rivalries are clashing. What we're seeing since 2 weeks ago is the separatists, the Southern Transitional Council, STC, is pushing in the south. It's advancing in southern Yemen. They advanced in Hadramaut, an area that's rich in oil and gas, and they're advancing also near the border with Oman in the Abyan area. Why does this implicate Saudi Arabia and the UAE? Well, the STC is mainly supported and funded by the UAE, and those guys were under the same umbrella just a few months ago in fighting the Houthis, in having their political coordination and political vision based in Aden. This is all now changing. The other area where this rivalry is also unfolding is Sudan. As you know very well, I've heard on your program great interviews with Sudanese figures. The war there is very much also a proxy war supported by the outside. In this case, the UAE supports the RSF. Saudi Arabia supports Burhan, who was actually just in Riyadh this week. This tension is very it's unhealthy for the region. In some ways, these are the two most powerful Gulf countries, and when their interests clash, when they're competing over different power dynamics, the smaller players in the region will pay the price.
And of course, this Southern Transitional Council that you mentioned, that's supported by the UAE, is a secessionist movement. wants to break off from Yemen. And of course, the Saudis are deeply opposed to this. They want to see the country remain united and stable. And similarly in Sudan too, there's this sense of the RSF wanting to create its own sort of independent space that would grant the UAE access to the Red Sea. The Red Sea, access to the Red Sea seems to be a major component of Emirati foreign policy, a sort of strategic goal. Can you unpack that a bit? Why does it matter so much to the UAE?
So strategically, Sudan is important for everyone. It's a big it's geographically very important for Egypt with the long border, as you mentioned, the ports. Traditionally, the UAE has vital interests in maintaining different ports access in the region. So that's not new. Where the rivalry is cutting deeper, for example, in Sudan, and how Emirati officials describe it, is we can't support any Islamist parties in power. And they view the the Burhan coalition with Islamist undertones. They say the Muslim Brotherhood is part of it. And not long time ago, Saudi Arabia was in that same camp. It's just all changed more recently. So this is more of a power play between these two. We know very well that during Mohammed bin Salman visit to the White House, the big visit to President Donald Trump, that actually the Saudis had advocated penalties and punishment against the RSF in Sudan, designating them. So that didn't go well with the UAE, a big supporter of RSF. The Saudis are very much, trying to perhaps they feel threatened by another big Gulf player, but they're very much trying to bring the U.S. administration to their camp. Is it working? I'm not so sure the US has enough leverage either in Sudan or in Yemen, but this is the landscape now. On your question on the secessionists in Yemen, yes, this is not something that the Emiratis actually hide. These people, if they want to separate, they will find support in the UAE. The issue with Yemen is, for so long, for over a decade now, we've seen the Houthis took over the capital Sana'a, overthrew Ali Abdullah Saleh. The Saudis entered reluctantly a war there, and they haven't able to figure another political equation that would work in the country. So almost everyone is in a bind in Yemen. It seems the UAE sees an opportunity with the SDC to push south to perhaps return to a divided Yemen.
Well, I mean, they share a common goal of wanting to limit Iranian influence. As you said, there is some divergence on ideological issues related to political Islam, where the UAE is much, much more opposed, let's say, to the Muslim Brotherhood than perhaps the Saudis appear to be, though they don't seem particularly keen on them either. They're more leaning towards the Salafists, but it's all incredibly sort of complex, as you say. But both of these countries are looking to a post-oil future and securing their roles in that post-oil future and making sure that they can sustain and grow their economic dominance. And perhaps that also puts them at loggerheads. We saw the Saudis insist that major companies now have their headquarters in Saudi Arabia if they want to continue to do business with Saudi Arabia. So obviously that's made the Emiratis quite unhappy. So there is an economic aspect to this for sure. But what I'd like to ask you, Joyce, draw on your expertise, is how much of this is also personal? Because Mohammed bin Zayed sees himself as something of a mentor of the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, somebody who taught him the ropes and perhaps was instrumental in getting him to change his kingdom. Can you talk about that a bit? And does he perhaps feel betrayed, or what's going on?
No, you took the words out of my mouth, Amber, and this is very much also personal. The MBZ sees himself as a mentor of MBS, especially after the US visit, after MBS advocating for sanctions on entities close to the UAE. This is no longer the honeymoon is definitely over that we saw 10 years 9 years ago when Mohammed bin Salman became crown prince, but the divide, the split in the relationship did not happen overnight. You mentioned companies moving, just a couple years ago, also big Saudi media outlets that were headquartered in Dubai, including Al Arabiya, moved to Riyadh. MBS's ambition is to have Riyadh like another Dubai. As far as dependency on oil, they're trying, but I'm not sure these economies are making more so this Saudi economy. I'm not sure they're making enough headways to be non-dependent on oil in the near future. We talk about Yemen, the Hadramaut area where the rift broke it's rich in oil and gas. The spark that lit that fighting was about oil and gas, was about the governor there restricting the STC from those resources. So
And it borders Saudi Arabia, Hadramaut.
yeah, I mean, Yemen is a very sensitive issue for Saudi Arabia. But then, the Islamist, non-Islamist layer, we're seeing it also play out in Syria, where the Saudis have very much embraced the Sharia order, the Sharia government, the Sharia regime, whatever you want to call it, and they teamed up with Turkey to do so. That's not how the UAE sees things. The Emiratis are investing here and there in Syria, but this is definitely not to their liking. The personal relationship, I think the damage that's been done is, I'm not sure, how easy it would be to repair. These are, two big personas in the region that don't take differences, don't take disagreements lightly. So yeah, we'll have to see how it plays out.
Today's transformation of the Middle East is at the center of global geopolitics. Whether you're an analyst, diplomat, executive, or academic, you need the best reporting and analysis to understand what's really happening on the ground and what it means for the world. Al Monitor is the award-winning independent leader in Middle East news. From Riyadh to Beirut, Abu Dhabi to Doha, and Baghdad to Tehran, our team of over 100 expert journalists report daily on the top stories driving the regional trends. Download our mobile app and subscribe to Al Monitor to follow what leaders and decision makers are reading every day. Go to almonitor.com, that's AL-MONITOR.com, and use promo code POD25, POD25, for a discount.
And then there's, of course, the matter of Israel, where you have the UAE enjoying, formal relations under the Abraham Accords, and the hope was, of course, that Saudi Arabia would join. But now, when you look at what's going on, and this is my conspiratorial side, you can only wonder whether, at some level, Israel is sort of, happy about this, because the Saudis have been pushing back against the joining the accords because of Gaza. Do they see this a way of pressuring somehow Saudi Arabia, or am I reading too much meaning into this?
I mean, for smaller states, for people watching from the outside, if they're stable, if they're strong, including Qatar, there is not much to be, crying about in the Saudi-Emirati rivalry. We're seeing Saudi get closer to Qatar. Sheikh Tamim was just in Riyadh last week. For Israel, it depends who you ask. It depends how they view this. For Israel, this probably does mean that the UAE is more dependent on the Abraham Accords, dependent on Israel as a trade, as a security partner. For Saudi Arabia, joining the Abraham Accords is a much harder pill to swallow, given its Islamist stature, given its how it views the Palestinian Authority, given its views on the conflict in general, and its history with the PLO, very different from that of the Emiratis. So it depends, but on the other hand, if you're, for example, Syria, if you're Lebanon, if you're Yemen, if you're Iraq, this rivalry is it's not good. Even if you're Egypt, who Sisi was getting funding, was getting support from both the Emiratis and the Saudis. I'm not so sure his relationship with the Emiratis is as stable at the time being. Libya, same thing. The divide between East and West, with Haftar much closer to the UAE, with Haftar in some cases teaming up with the RSF to solidify these gains on the border. So it depends where you sit in the region. It depends on your influence as a state. For Israel, I don't think they expect Saudi Arabia to join and normalize anytime soon. But even that doesn't seem like a priority for them. It was more of a priority for the Biden administration, for now the Trump administration, but less so to these countries in the region.
And just one final question about Iran. Where does Iran fit into this picture of growing Emirati-Saudi rivalry?
So when it comes to Iran, I mean, these countries are less inclined for confrontation with Iran either way. But when it comes to the rivalry, you can see Iran taking advantage, by doing military drills in the occupied Emirati islands. You can see Saudi, saying, "Oh, we need to talk to the Iranians." So this removes some pressure off Iran. The same way when, the boycott against Qatar just dominated the Gulf dynamics and relationships and took off pressure. But again, the Iranian file, what happens to the nuclear program, is very much a matter for the Israelis and for the Americans and the Europeans if we see negotiations back on track. The one thing that's interesting in all of this is the Trump administration doesn't know how to navigate this rivalry. They don't know what to do about it. These are two good partners of the United States. These are two, MBS and MBZ are two personas that Trump somehow admires. So they're finding themselves caught in the middle. You see Mas'ad Boulos, the Sudan envoy, going to the UAE, gaining praise. Rubio, on the other hand, hinting at UAE role, but doesn't say it by name. You're seeing Trump, rolls the red carpet for Mohammed bin Salman, but at the same time doesn't want to take the distance and, concede in designating the RSF. So this is a real test for Washington, and it is very much finding its leverage constrained when it comes to reconciling the differences, when it comes to changing the status quo in Yemen and in Sudan.
So maybe more opportunities for Chinese diplomacy here.
Well, Wang Yi is in the region, the foreign minister. The Chinese do have some economic clout in Sudan, and they historically they have had some relations with the Houthis in Yemen. I'm not sure about the SDC. All in all, Amberin, it's interesting to see how this region is evolving, how to see these middle powers are just taking matters into their own hands, less so waiting for Washington for others to settle their scores.
It certainly is a fascinating time, Joyce. Thank you so much for joining us today. And to our listeners, I would say, please sign up for Joyce's China Middle East newsletter. It's full of great information and insights.
Thank you so much. Happy holidays.
Thank you, Joyce. Bye. Well, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Joyce. And like I said, do subscribe to her newsletter. For that and more, go to our website, www.al-monitor.com. Thanks for tuning in and talk to you soon. Goodbye.